Good morning. This is Chapter 20, Lecture B. I don't have the little board up here, sorry. We're going to be doing this pretty quick today. I may not go as much detail as I'd like, but we're going to go at a pretty brisk pace today. A little bit of a recap on a couple of things for next week. Monday is your test. The test has already been given out and provided to your local areas. Secondly, Tuesday will be the Chapter 21 lecture. It's already posted online. You can listen to it. So 21 is a design day for you to listen to that. It's about 30-40 minutes long. Wednesday, the Chapter 21 reaction quiz will pose, and Thursday, the Chapter 21 quiz will post. All the deadlines for all these things, minus the test, is over a week out. I think I've got it for like February 17th, 18th, somewhere in there. If you have not got Chapter 19 reaction quiz done, or Chapter 20 reaction quiz and Chapter 20 quiz done, you will have time to get them done. Okay. Since I'm gone for that week, there is plenty of time to get all those items done. They are all posted or will post in order on the classroom, because some of that stuff I don't want to release yet. So, like the Chapter 21 stuff, will not post until next week or be allowed to be done. So make sure you're keeping track of that. I'm current on the grades up to this week, and I hopefully will be caught up pretty quickly on that regard. Okay, I've got about 20 minutes of lecture probably to get done here. It's going to be fast, furious, and please listen. Okay, the fundamentalist revolt. Many evangelical Protestants felt threatened by the decline of traditional values. They didn't like these modernists or these new ways. They definitely did not like the flapper, living for the moment indulgence. They're going to be called fundamentalists. They convinced that the Bible was literal truth, sought to stop the new wave. So these fundamentalists literally believe the interpretation of the Bible was 100% accurate. So God created the world in a day. That's what they literally believe. I'm not here to judge it, go into it. It's also part of where the creationism theory came about. Instead of evolution, it'll counteract. They'll say creationism, the biblical creation, is the accurate, not evolution. Billy Sunday is a revivalist preacher who denounced sins ranging from Darwinism to alcohol. They are going to be proponents of prohibition, because they're going to say we need to do away with these sins, these vices. Prohibition was in effect, divided the Democratic Party into wet and dry wings. Wet was you wanted to drink, dry was you were in favor of prohibition. Too many Americans, it was a violation of individual freedom. So every day a lot of Americans say, this should be our right. Doesn't matter if you think it's wrong or right. We should have the ability to drink if we would like. So the fundamentalist revolt, though, so this is where we get super conservative for a period, or a group is trying to counteract these changes in America. You're going to see this most importantly in the culture wars too, with the Scopes trial, often known as the Scopes monkey trial. Embedded in this PowerPoint, because of time I won't have time to watch it, but is, ironically enough, a Drunk Histories video about the Scopes monkey trial. It does a pretty good job talking about it. 1925, a trial in Tennessee that involved John Scopes, a science teacher who violated, I believe it was either Kentucky or Tennessee law that said teaching Charles Darwin theory of evolution. The newly created ACLU defended Scopes along with Clarence Darrow, a renowned atheist lawyer for the period. Atheism was not as paramount then as it is today, or I guess cultural acceptance. William Jennings Bryan, the guy who ran for president 4 times, we talked about him a lot, guy from Nebraska, did serve in Wilson's administration, was called as an expert witness, and was actually the chief prosecutor for the most part. Jury found Scopes guilty and fined him $100. Now, he didn't pay that personally. The ACLU had that paid for by him. Later on, this will be overturned by the Tennessee Supreme Court on a technicality. But the reality was, this Scopes trial, first off, it was a publicity stunt for the town in Tennessee. They wanted to make attention, and it made world news. Second, fundamentalists wanted to put evolution on trial. It was creationism in the Bible versus Darwinism in science. So it was a very dramatic tale of what was now clashing in the United States. So the Scopes monkey trial, very interesting insight. The reality is that most of it was probably a publicity stunt to bring tourism to the town, which worked effectively. But it's a very important case nevertheless. The second Klan, the rise of the KKK again. American freedom should be limited on religious and ethnic grounds, was the resurgence of the KKK. They were reborn in 1915 after the lynching of Leo Frank, who was a Jew. they focused on immigration and not just blacks. So they're not going to just limit to blacks, but they're going to focus on other minorities. It will be short-lived. It will not be a long-lived period of Klan activity, but they do come back. And the Klan still exists to this day, but obviously in a different context. Okay, Culture Wars 3. There's a video which I recommend to watch. Culture Wars 3, Closing the Golden Door. Klan's influence faded after 25, so about a decade there where they'll heavily influence, when their leader was convicted of assaulting a woman. Pressure to stop immigration after World War I will come heavy. 1921 temporary measure restricted immigration from Europe from 350,000 to one-third of that, the average before the war. So they're going to drastically stop European immigration, and that's going to be partly because of the anarchy or the Russian Revolution that creates the Soviet Union and stuff. We don't want these what we call anarchists, the Red Scare people coming to the United States. We will permanently limit immigration from Europe to 150,000. So we're taking drastic steps. Ironically enough, no limitation for Mexico. Yay, Mexicans come to America. Drastically different today, 100 years later, which is the irony of everything. This is where illegal alien will become a new category or a term. Illegal alien just means you're here in the country illegally, not from space illegally. Race and law. Both North and the South agreed on the regulation of blacks with second-class citizenship. Biological definition of the ideal population, equality instead of will be a definer. So quality of people. And this is also where you're going to get the invention of like IQ tests and such. They're going to talk about race quality. And basically it's a way of racial segregation, racial profiling based off quality people. And this is also going to be defining in immigration as well. The Supreme Court supported the concept that race was basis for public policy, lacked any rational foundation though. So you're going to see race and law go hand in hand here a little bit. It's not always going to be an easy situation. The Culture Wars 4, promoting tolerance. All right. Sorry, I just spilled coffee all over myself. Immigrant groups asserted the validity of cultural diversity and identified toleration. Roman Catholic Church urged immigrants to learn English, embrace the American principles. Basically what they're going to say is, as you immigrate to the United States, you need to basically accept the American way. You can keep some of your cultural traits, but you need to assimilate. You can't go against the grain all the time. You're going to have the emergence of Harlem. This is where you saw an upsurge of self-consciousness among black Americans. Urban ghettos. New York's Harlem is going to gain an international reputation as the capital of black America. It's going to thrive. It's called the Harlem Renaissance. This is part of that great migration north. A lot of them will settle in Harlem. This will be a huge area, an attraction where blacks are accepted, and a lot of cool art, literature, music. This is a very fun feel. Slumming, as groups of whites visited Harlem dance halls, jazz clubs, and speakeasies in the search of exotic adventure. So this slumming, whites are going to recognize, hey, this is pretty cool. So they're going to come in and they want to experience this. They're going to, sometimes they'll be welcome, a lot of times they won't. Because this is an African American thing, right? This is an area that is safe for African Americans. They're not necessarily all out wanting whites to come in. So this Harlem Renaissance, as it will be called, vibrant black cultural community, the new Negro associated in politics with Pan-Africanism and the military militants of the Garvey movement, took the roots of the black experience, Africa, the rural South folk traditions, and life of the urban ghetto. So it's a mixing of the new urban concept, the old African ancestry, the old Southern way of life, and makes a whole new culture there in Harlem. Okay, the Great Depression won. So as we got all this stuff coming, the 20s obviously has got a lot of cultural stuff going on, but by the end of the 20s, one of the most dramatic events in American history is going to come about, and the world, needless to say, and it's going to create a lot of angst around the world, and that's the Great Depression. In 1928, Herbert Hoover appeared destined for greatness. He was born in Iowa, made rich in mining, and was Secretary of Commerce under Coolidge. Very smart man. He believed in little government regulation, and when I mean a smart man, he was educated. He had been under a successful president with Coolidge. The country was thriving. And so it was very easy for him to win the presidency. Coolidge said, "I'm done. I don't want to run again. I've did my time, served my country." Hoover was the easy candidate. Alfred Smith was a Democrat, Catholic, and wanted to end prohibition. He was a wet. His Catholicism, though, became a central issue, where Hoover was more of a, I think he was a Quaker, pacifist, more conservative nature, did not drink. And ultimately, Hoover will win the election with 58% of the vote. Like I said, everything's chiming along really good in 1928. The Great Depression, too. However, a series of economic issues are going to come forefront, and it's going to have a cascading effect. First off, October 29th, 1929, stock market crashed. It's not the single lost more than $10 billion in market value. This does not directly cause the Great Depression because it actually gained a lot of it back. But this is one. It's not the single worst day in stock market history, but it is near the top. The Great Depression, real estate speculation in California and Florida, banks failed and remained undeveloped and mortgages foreclosed. Basically, there was a bunch of land that had been speculated that was not developed. Now it was worthless. Unequal distribution of income. This is a big one. The rich were super rich, the poor were super poor in many areas. And basically, it's just uneven distribution of wealth. There's not enough money in the middle class and the poor to really help them get out of it. European demand for American goods decline. We're going to have a surplus. So overproduction. That's going to be commonly related with high tariffs. We have a high tariff. Europeans are going to quit buying American goods, and then factories and stuff are going to go idle. Warehouses are going to be full of goods not being sold. Germany will default on the reparation payments to France and Great Britain. American banks are going to suffer heavily from this that had loaned money to the German country. Banks will close as people withdrew money. There'll be bank runs. Very little life savings for people, nothing to fall back on. Millions of families will lose all their money they have. When the banks close, there is no insurance to guarantee their money will be safe. So when the banks close, they lose everything. GDP fell by 1/3. Unemployment rose to over 25. At its peak, 30%. 4/5 of the Rockefeller family fortune disappeared. So John Rockefeller, who had been the richest man in the world, 4/5 of his fortune disappeared. That's insane. Put in perspective, if you're worth $1 billion, what's that leave you? 25 million?
No, 250.
250 million. Either case, that's crazy amount, right? 250 is still a lot of money, and he was worth probably equivalent at that point at $1 billion.
But he lost 750.
Equivalent, man. I don't know what it, I mean. Let's say it was 500 million he was worth, because I don't know if we have any billionaires at that point. If he had 500 million in net worth, now you're down quite a bit, right?
Well, that would be 200 million, not 250.
Mm-hmm. But you get where I'm going at with this,
Yeah.
right? It's a crazy amount of loss.
They lost a lot.
The Great Depression 3. Now, I want you to understand the Great Depression does not start because of the stock market crash. What it does is creates an environment that's not very healthy in the country. Okay, so it's not a direct cause, but it helps facilitate a bad environment to which people make bad or the economy goes bad. So the Great Depression in 3. Americans in depression. Hundreds of thousands took to the road in search for work. Families who were kicked out of homes moved to shanty towns. They're going to call them Hooversville. So basically when...
May I have your attention, please? We need to dismiss wrestlers, high school wrestlers for district. Thank you.
Sorry for that interruption. High school wrestlers, go do your thing. Okay. Families were kicked out of homes, so as the economy slowed, jobs are going to dry up. People lose their jobs. They don't have savings. Bank closings happen. They're going to move to Hoovervilles. These are shanty towns. They're basically wooden boxes. No plumbing, no electricity. They just erect these buildings in the middle of anywhere that they could find. Soviet Union advertised its need for skilled workers, and it received more than 100,000 applicants from the United States. People are going to try to go to the Soviet Union to work. Suicide rate rose to the highest point, and birth rate fell. So we're going to have a decline in population. Resignation and protest. Many reacted with resignation or blamed themselves. 20,000 unemployed World War I veterans, called the Bonus Army, will march on D.C. demanding they be paid. In the 1920s, when everything was going great, Congress had said that in 1945, all World War I veterans would receive like a bonus of $1,000, something sizable for that period. Well, they said we need it now. We can't wait till 1945. We may not be here. Communist Party was in the shadows and it grew, but it will never be a huge majority. But they're in the shadows, and they're going to secretly recruit, talk to Americans, and always try to maybe influence the future. Hoover's response. Hoover's response is terrible. Andrew Mellon, the Secretary of the Treasury, told Hoover economic downturns are normal, so this is not uncommon. He believed government should not give aid. Hoover ultimately believed that the government should not directly help American citizens, and this will ride him into his loss in 1932. Association action put faith in voluntary steps by businesses. Basically said, hey, businesses, do these things. They're good for the country. Now, at the end of the day, some of these businesses might have said, okay, I'll try this, but at the end of the day, the businesses are going to look out for themselves. They're not going to do voluntary things unless they're told to or they have to. The reality is they're suffering. They're going to cut their losses. So the Great Depression forward, to wrap this up, the worsening economic outlook, we had the Smoot-Hawley tariff that we talked about. High tariffs had reduced trade internationally significantly. It's a terrible tariff that will hurt the U.S. economy and world economy. He will finally sign, Hoover will finally sign the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, loaning money to failing banks, railroads, and other businesses, but once again, he refuses direct aid to individual citizens or unemployment or anything. So ultimately, by 1932, the economy it's in a bad situation. It sucks, and Hoover has really no answer to it. And that's going to lead us to Chapter 21. We'll get to next week, talking about the New Deal and the rise of FDR. As a reminder, this concludes Chapter 20. Monday is the test. That will cover Chapter 16 through 19. Chapter 20 will be on the next test. All these snow days, winter days, hopefully we can get everyone caught back up. I will extend deadlines for all the quizzes and stuff out there. So make sure you are keeping track of where you're at. Chapter 19 reaction quiz should be the one thing that you have been thinking about this week, and it should be most of you, or half of you I think, have done it. Chapter 20 reaction and quiz are open now, and hopefully you can get those done in the Chapter 21 quizzes. We'll post next week. Okay, this is about 5 things you can work on as far as quizzes are concerned. Also, not to just so you're kind of tracking, the book essay information is out there. In April, we'll have a week devoted to you writing an essay over the Cold War book. And I will keep reminding you, I'll give you some more guidance on that. But the literally step-by-step of what we're going to do for that essay is included on the classroom already. It's under materials. All right, have a good weekend. I'll see you when I get back.